right?
Yes.
Okay. The proposition I will be refuting is terminally ill patients could benefit from euthanasia. My opponent's secondary claims included: 1, everyone has the right to personal freedom and self-government. 2, euthanasia allows patients death with dignity. Third, euthanasia could reduce medical costs. And 4th, adapting euthanasia into society. I'll first respond to the claim that everyone has the right to personal freedom and self-government. My opponent cited Griswold v. Connecticut and Roe v. Wade, which deal with freedom of choice. However, these do not deal with euthanasia. They deal with contraception and abortion, which are different issues from terminating a life that already exists, like a full person. Also, the law does not allow for suicide. A quote from the Journal of the American Academy of Psychiatry and the Law Online. Suicide continues to be recognized as a crime by common law in a few states. In those jurisdictions, the beneficiary of the claim must prove that the individual who attempted or committed suicide was of unsound mind to avoid having the patient's act declared illegal, which would bar recovery of the claim. In malpractice and insurance cases, expert testimony is required regarding the mental state of the individual who attempted or committed suicide. So, in euthanasia, it would be required to say that the individual was of sound mind when claiming if it was just and legal, and many states do not allow for it at all anyway, either way. My opponent also quoted Article 1, Section 10, and Section 5 of Amendment 14 of the Constitution, which Section 5 only of Amendment 14 does not apply to all personal freedoms, as she claimed, but it applies to that amendment, which guarantees citizenship and rights that come with citizenship to all people not born or naturalized in our country. And Section 10 of Article 1 deals with military, taxing, commerce, welfare, institutions such as like the post office, etc., which gives Congress the power to make laws that are necessary and proper to perform its duties in these areas, but does not say anything about life or the ability to euthanize. The second claim I will be refuting is that euthanasia allows patients death with dignity. She claims that a person's quality of life is severely degraded as they live, if they require assistance in living and cannot do things on their own, but no one can decide if a person's quality of life is degraded except for that person. And it's also difficult to determine the patient's state of mind when suffering or dying from a terminal illness, so they may make irrational claims. Third, her third claim was that euthanasia can reduce medical costs, and treatments may be expensive, but it is impossible to determine the cost of saving a life. Also, the costs are offset by the jobs created in the medical industry as a result of necessary care for the terminally ill and older individuals. She also makes a claim that the cost of treating a lung cancer patient, for instance, has risen from $7,000 to $40,000. There's no evidence to suggest that this is because of the terminally ill, nor that euthanasia would reduce this cost. It could just be a result of inflation, and no year is given for the amount of the $7,000, so it could have been years ago when the cost of living was lower and prices on all things were lower. She also claims that it has a significant cost on the family, and this could influence their decision if they do decide to euthanize, because to lower the cost on themselves rather than the wishes of the person. And finally, she claimed that euthanasia has been adapted into society. So far, Oregon, and she does claim that Oregon is one state that allows euthanasia, but it is the only state that allows euthanasia at this point. And according to a resource from the Nightingale Alliance, which is a society against euthanasia, but this data was merely on the laws in each state by each state, so it doesn't, and there's factual laws, not claims. States that don't explicitly prohibit euthanasia often don't allow it because it's considered homicide. And if euthanasia is adapted into society, as it was in the examples that she gave, the government made choices on the criteria for euthanasia, so it eliminates the personal choice and liberty of the individual anyway. And therefore, I refute her claim that terminally ill patients could benefit from euthanasia.
The issues are laid out adequately. You get a good signpost on the first point. You do address some of the cases that the advocate presented, Griswold and Rowe. You're challenging the analogy on those particular cases, and I think you've got a legitimate point, but you don't have any evidence to back that up, and there are court rulings about the issue of whether or not there is a right to die, and I'm surprised that you didn't cite them, because those court rulings directly contradict the two cases that are cited there, so it seemed a little bit underdeveloped. The suicide argument, I thought that was explained a little bit more effectively, although you did get a little sidetracked on what some of the issues are, that somebody would have to testify that a person's a sound mind. Well, how does that advance your position? I wasn't quite clear. The claim about the 14th Amendment, I didn't think that the explanation that you provided was particularly clear. On the second point, you summarized the advocate's point adequately. It's a quality of life issue. Your position, it comes down to, well, maybe they're acting irrationally. But you've got no evidence on that. We have no reason to believe that. I think there is probably a good argument to be made that a person who is terminally ill might have some irrational behavior because they are depressed or because there's some other problem associated with them, and so they're not really in a state of mind to be able to make an appropriate decision here. You need to make that claim a lot more clearly. I think the third point is problematic for you because you buy into the premise that cost and the amount of money that we spend is relevant on this particular issue, and instead of using it to run with the negative consequences, if we use cost as a measure of determining whether or not somebody should live or die, that opens a can of worms that most people don't want to deal with. Instead, you could just kind of give a couple of presses on maybe what the source of the costs are. And I thought you had one good issue that suggested that, well, there's no demonstration that euthanasia would change the way that costs are increasing. I think that's the best point on that point. And then the whole thing about the organ example, so how does that support your position or undermine the advocate's position? It just sounds like information about that particular subject. There's no declarative statement there, so it takes up time, but it doesn't necessarily advance a point of view for either of you. All right, thank you.